Picture this. Two men who had once worked at the same football club and were good friends now stand on opposite sides of the touchline, separated by years of hatred. Millions around the world watched, eager to see who would come out on top. Over the next decade, these two men would battle for trophies, redefine modern football, and dominate the sport like few ever have. This is the story of Pep Guardiola and José Mourinho, the complete timeline from the very beginning. The year is 1990, and José Mourinho has just landed a job. Not as a coach, but as a translator for legendary manager Sir Bobby Robson. Mourinho accepted the role, but over the following years, he proved he was much more than just a translator. Robson quickly recognized his tactical adeptness, and before long, Mourinho had become one of his closest assistants. Then, in 1996, everything changed. After leaving his position at Porto, Robson was appointed manager of Barcelona, and with him, he brought his assistant, José Mourinho. There, he met a player named Pep Guardiola. Pep had been playing for Barcelona since the early 90s, achieving 16 trophies during his stint, and being an important piece in Barcelona's midfield under the likes of Johan Cruyff. At the time, they were actually quite good friends, constantly talking about tactics. Anyway, Robson's brief stint ended at the club, and he was out the door, and in came Louis van Gaal. Mourinho decided this time to not go with Robson, opting to work under van Gaal instead. And he continued to show how good of an assistant coach he was, as he was also trusted by van Gaal, but he eventually would leave too, as well as Guardiola, who would only continue to play for a few more years. And soon enough, Jose would leave as well, when he finally got the opportunity to be manager of Benfica. His tenure at the club was very short, however, as he resigned after just 9 league matches, due to being pushed out of the door by new ownership. He then took charge of Porto 2 years later, and everything changed. He quickly brought a style of win-at-all-cost structured defending to the club, transforming a side that was 5th when he was appointed to winning the league the following season on a record-high points tally at the time. Then, better yet, Mourinho did the impossible. In the Champions League, he beat Manchester United in the round of 16 thanks to a last-minute winner, beat Lyon in the quarterfinals, beat Deportivo La Coruña, who were a very good team at the time, and made their way to a Champions League final, where they beat Monaco 3-0 in dramatic fashion. This remains one of the biggest Champions League surprises in history, and many teams took notice of the young Portuguese coach. Just that same year, he took charge of Premier League club Chelsea, and during his very first press conference, he dropped this infamous line.
I'm European champion, so I'm not one of the bottle. Please don't call me arrogant, because what I'm saying is true. I think I'm a special one.
And thus, he was deemed the special one. And during his legendary tenure at Chelsea, he won 2 Premier Leagues, multiple domestic cups, and continued his crazy antics. For example, during one quarterfinal match in the Champions League, Mourinho, who was banned from the stadium, snuck into the locker room by hiding in a laundry basket to talk to his players. After a speech, he then promptly left through that same basket. Eventually, he left Chelsea due to disagreements with the owner, Roman Abramovich. His tenure, though, would not be forgotten. Meanwhile, Pep Guardiola, since leaving Barcelona, had played for about 5 more years before retiring from football, and then he promptly went into management, coaching the Barcelona B team, and he started to instill his philosophies of the game into his young players. He used his playstyle as an example, as he was a very technical footballer who had mastered ball control and passing techniques. He took inspiration from his former manager, Johan Cruyff, and perfected the tactical playstyle known as tiki-taka. And now the year is 2008. And Barcelona had just let go of Rijkaard as manager, and they were looking for a new one. And it looked like José Mourinho was seemingly destined to return to Barcelona. He had conquered Europe with Porto, dominated England with Chelsea, and already knew the club inside and out. He was even interviewed, and the process seemingly went well. To many, the decision appeared obvious, but inside Barcelona, there were doubts about him. They were worried about his abrasive personality and his focus on defensive football. And then, Cruyff made his feelings clear. He said an adamant no to the special one and endorsed Guardiola, the man who had never coached a single professional game of football. And so, the board listened and José Mourinho felt snubbed. He had lost arguably his dream job to his former friend, who had no experience in professional football, and this was the true start of the rivalry. But for now, he could do nothing about it, and he took the Inter Milan job. Meanwhile, Pep began a revolution at Barcelona which would permanently change the landscape of football forever. As soon as he came in, he instantly discarded Ronaldinho, Deco, and Eto'o, telling them that they should find a new club. These were some of the biggest stars at Barcelona who would carry them through their dark ages. But just like that, Pep had discarded them. Dino and Deco left before the window was over, but Eto'o would stay for another season and would prove to be pivotal in the early stages of his tenure. He then reshaped the entire way that Barcelona wanted to play football. He brought back the philosophy of total football, or tiki-taka, that Johan Cruyff implemented back in the 90s. This time though, he perfected it. His style was insistent on quick short passing and holding possession of the ball for as long as you can, making sure the opposition cannot get it. But to play this style, Barcelona would need to have a midfield three so technically gifted that nobody could even stop them. They had already assembled two great players in Xavi and Iniesta, along with Yaya Touré, but Pep didn't really care for him. Over time, he would slowly be phased out in favor of a very young Busquets, and thus, he had the greatest midfield three ever assembled. These tactical changes led to the best outcome possible.
El pase perfecto, va a llegar Henry, oportunidad Henry, gol!
Oh, Eto's opened it up. Massive grab.
Messi. It's Iniesta!
Hail the new kings of Europe, Barcelona.
Pep and his men had just secured a sextuple and became a force to be reckoned with. By the end of the 2009 season, Barcelona had won every competition they entered. Pep had taken a team in transition and turned them into what many still consider the greatest club side of all time. At just 38 years old, he was on top of the footballing world. Yet he still demanded more as he decided to sell Samuel Eto'o. And take a guess as to what man he decided to sell him to. Well, it was José Mourinho. And while the cess of Pep Guardiola was going on, Mourinho was trying to make sense of his squad. Inter were already dominating Serie A at the time, but with their squad being quite old, they seemed a bit out of date compared to what was happening across the rest of Europe. However, Mourinho actually liked the fact that they were old. He preferred to say experience. And so, he started to instill a siege mentality into the squad. He brought his tactics of parking the bus and aggressive defending, making sure that his players would die for him. He also made sure that his tactics were extremely disciplined. He won and dominated Serie A with ease, but in terms of Europe, he got knocked out in the round of 16 by Manchester United. It was a bad day for Mourinho, but he isn't called the special one for no reason. That summer, Mourinho went to work. In the transfer window, Mourinho brought in Samuel Eto'o from Barcelona in exchange for Zlatan, and brought in players like Milito, Wesley Sneijder, and Thiago Motta, and other strong reinforcements. This time around, he didn't want to challenge for just Serie A. He wanted to challenge for the Champions League, and awaiting him was Pep Guardiola. As the season kicked off, Inter started on fire, beating their neighbors Milan 4-0 and only losing 2 games from its first 15. But Barcelona in La Liga remained stronger, not losing a single game from its first 20 as they stayed in first. But Inter only got better as the season went on. In the Champions League, Inter had beaten Chelsea, Mourinho's former club, and CSKA Moscow to reach the semi-finals, and Pep's Barcelona did the same thing, beating Stuttgart and Arsenal to make it to the semi-finals as well. And they would have to face each other. And this was when the rivalry exploded. Mourinho was quoted as saying that he and his team don't fear Barcelona, and as soon as they lined up for their first leg in Italy, things would get interesting. The game started off pretty open, with both teams looking to try and attack, but pretty quickly, Barcelona would go 1-0 up thanks to Pedro's goal. But from here, Inter would completely take control of the game and dominate. Wesley Sneijder scored their first goal in the 13th minute, then Maicon scored right after the break for 2-1. Then later on, Milito scored again to make it 3-1 on the night, and when the final whistle was blown, Mourinho and his players celebrated the masterclass they had against Barcelona. But remember that there is still a second leg to play, and Inter Milan are going to have to travel to the Camp Nou. And right away, Barcelona looked to pounce on the Inter Milan defense. They probed the defense, looking for a weakness. And when Thiago Motta in the 20th minute hit Busquets in the face, being sent off, things started to look rough for Inter. And from there, they would have to go fully defensive with every man behind the ball. But Barcelona wouldn't even let up for a second. They would continue to attack and attack, but Inter's defensive and disciplined structure completely nullified Barcelona's attacks. Messi looked somewhat uninspiring, Zlatan couldn't find his way out of the sea of defenders, and Pedro looked inefficient. Somehow, Mourinho had managed to silence the Barcelona attack that had dominated Europe. And as the clock ticked down, Barcelona got more and more desperate. Eventually though, they did finally find the breakthrough, with Piqué brilliantly spinning and beating the defender and keeper, but it was already past 80 minutes and too late for the comeback to be made. As the game finished, Inter had managed to win on aggregate score, and the scenes from the Inter players were incredible. And most importantly, José Mourinho. As soon as the whistle went, he sprinted across the entire field and celebrated right in front of the Barcelona fans, instantly annoying them. Barcelona ended up having to turn on the sprinklers to force the team off the pitch. And all that Pep could do was watch. This rivalry had just become a war. Inter ended up winning the treble, beating Bayern in the Champions League final, and once again, Mourinho went crazy. But one club had been watching what Mourinho had just done to Pep's Barcelona. At that moment, Real Madrid decided to hire him, and his one mission was to dethrone Pep Guardiola. And with them both coaching the two biggest clubs in the world, who hated each other, and coaching the two best players in the world respectively, Messi and Ronaldo, this was going to be a treat. During Real's transfer window the previous year, they had brought in Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema, Kaká, and Xabi Alonso, but for the standards they set, they underperformed, with Madrid losing La Liga to Barcelona, losing the Copa del Rey in just the round of 32 to 3rd division side AD Alcorcón, and lost the Champions League round of 16 to Lyon. When Mourinho came in, he was expected to fix the bad situation. First of all, as he had done at Inter, he created a siege mentality for the squad to get behind him. He made it seem as if the whole world was against Madrid, fostering their loyalty to him. Next, he knew that trying to beat Barcelona at its own game of possession was going to be impossible, and instead of trying to copy them, he decided to build his own style. What he designed was a team that was deadly on the transition, with players like Ronaldo, Benzema, and others that we'll get to. He brought Mesut Ozil for his creativity and to supply balls into the box. He brought Di Maria for his quickness on the transition. He then built this entire team around Ronaldo, as he was one of the best players in the world, and with this tactic built in place, Mourinho hoped to be able to unlock Pep's side. In terms of results, Madrid were unbeaten for the first 12 games, holding first in La Liga. Guardiola's team were not far behind, however, as they were just 1 point shy of them. Then November came, and the first El Clásico between Pep and Mourinho was ready to start, but nobody could have predicted what would happen. Barcelona came out of the gate with fire and fury, as Madrid were not ready. In just 10 minutes, Barcelona scored one, and then another. Halftime opened up and Barcelona scored again to make it 3-0. Then they made it 4-0, and by full time, Madrid had been ripped apart to pieces by Barcelona. The final score was Barcelona 5, Real Madrid 0. This wasn't just a regular defeat, it was a humiliation from their arch rivals. Mourinho had spent months building Real Madrid into a team capable of challenging Barcelona. Pep Guardiola had just shown the entire world that they weren't even close. Club president Florentino Perez called it the worst game in the history of the club, and it looked like Pep was the clear winner. But again, José Mourinho isn't one to give up so quickly. He's called the special one for a reason. He went back to the tactics board, changed what wasn't working, and created a new game plan to get his revenge. And during historical time in football, we have the perfect opportunity. Madrid and Barcelona over the span of 18 days were set to play each other 4 times in 3 different competitions. This would be the best chance he had. Their first meeting came in La Liga at the Santiago Bernabeu. The match ended in a tense 1-1 draw, with both sides refusing to give an inch. The second meeting came in the Copa del Rey final just 4 days later. The game remained extremely cagey between the two. Eventually, Ronaldo showed up, scoring a vital extra-time header to win José his first trophy at Real Madrid. He had proven that Madrid could beat this side, but another El Clásico was on the way just a week later as they came up against each other in the Champions League semi-finals. Mourinho and Pep would be going up against each other again in the Champions League, who would become the winner. As always, the two teams would start very cagey, with many flying tackles coming in from the likes of Ramos and Pepe, and that would come to bite them. Pepe gets sent off for his high-flying challenge, sending Real down to 10 men. Without one of Real's best defenders, they remained extremely susceptible to Barcelona. And thanks to 2 late magical goals from Messi, Madrid were as good as finished. In the following press conference, Mourinho sends shots at Guardiola and UEFA as a whole, questioning whether favorable decisions may be going on. He says that he would be ashamed to win the Champions League the way Guardiola has. He brings up that in all 4 meetings with Barcelona this season, he had a man sent off. And he says that if he spoke the way he wanted to speak, his career would be over. However, Guardiola remained level-headed and responded to this by simply saying, "We'll see on the pitch tomorrow." The second leg ended in a 1-1 draw at the Camp Nou. And although these 4 El Clásico results count as 1 win, 2 draws, and 1 loss, Pep Guardiola was the one that came out on top, as he managed to win the Champions League in dominant fashion against Manchester United. He had also managed to win La Liga as well, leaving Mourinho's first season as somewhat of a failure. But the thing was, Mourinho had found a slight crack in the armor of Guardiola. He'd beaten Barcelona before, and he could beat them again. But Guardiola was still on top of the world. He brought in Cesc Fabregas and Alexis Sanchez for more depth, and left his tactics essentially the same. But you could start to tell that he was becoming exhausted with the constant back-and-forth battle in press conferences and the stress of managing one of the biggest clubs in the world. He was sick of Mourinho's crazy antics on the pitch as well. During a game between the two in August, José poked the eyes out of Tito Vilanova, Pep's assistant manager. Pep's exhaustion extended to the players as well, who had a sloppy start to the campaign by their standards, having 4 draws and 1 loss in the first 15 games. Meanwhile, Madrid had just 1 loss and 1 draw, and it was time for another El Clásico to be played at the Bernabeu. With Barcelona being 6 points off Madrid, they needed a win to get themselves firmly back in the race. And they did just that, winning the game 3-1. And despite Barcelona's average form and Pep's tiredness, Mourinho simply couldn't capitalize as Barcelona came back in the title race. But Mourinho refused to let Pep get another title over him. He knew everything he'd spent building the last 2 years was on the line. After this loss, something finally awoke in this Real Madrid team. Because they went on a ridiculous run, not losing one single game over the next 20 match days, all while Barcelona continued to stumble in the title race. 6-2 against Sevilla, 5-1 against Granada, 4-0 against Racing, 4-1 against Atletico. Week after week, Madrid refused to let another title fall to the Catalans, and for the first time, Madrid and Barcelona met at the Camp Nou. If Real Madrid won, the title race would be effectively over. But if Barcelona could win, they would get the momentum they needed to potentially snatch the title from their hands. Both men stood on the touchline knowing exactly what was at stake, and the players knew it too, as both teams were stuck in a deadlock late in the game. But Ronaldo does this.
Grip ball. Ronaldo, he's onside. He's beaten the defence. He draws Valdez. Cristiano Ronaldo! And is that the goal? But not just silences the Camp Nou, but silences Barcelona.
The Camp Nou was completely silent, and as the final whistle blew, both teams knew that Real Madrid had just won La Liga for the first time in years, all thanks to the dedication of the players and José Mourinho. He had come in to dethrone Guardiola, and he had finally achieved that goal. Just a few days later after this loss, Pep Guardiola officially announced that he'd be leaving Barcelona. With 14 trophies in 4 years, dominance that we will never see again, and a legacy that is near perfect, except for one man, José Mourinho. And football will never see a rivalry like Guardiola versus Mourinho ever again.